We are going to continue with the last and concluding part of this particular essay, and we are trying to once again recapitulate what Northrop Frye discussed about the archetypes of literature. In yesterday's lecture, we have discussed about how he talked and how he identified the central myths of literature, and how this central myth used to make us to understand the framework of criticism, how art, which Plato called dream for awakened mind, and how the final cause, the resolution of antithesis, and what are the integral place of criticism among other social sciences, how it is making the social function suitable for understanding of literature. We have discussed all these things in yesterday's lecture. Continuing with yesterday's tone, Fry further tried to point out that in myths, usually, God and hero are having a very ultimate position. And with that ultimate position, gods and heroes can able to do whatever they plan to get it, the sort of thing for the betterment of the society. It is going to be a ritual of the society. And that's why Fry talked about the importance of God and hero in myths. The importance of God or hero in the myth lies in the fact that such characters conceived human likeness and yet after conceiving the human likeness behave like human beings. For example, if you look into the Indian mythology, very famous mythology, Indian mythology, Ramayana and Mahabharata, epics, the great epics, where you will find out the god like god or hero is having human likeness. They have some human qualities in them. They are not different from human beings. They possess the humanness in them. But certain special features are added into their personality. Gods are heroes in mythology who conceived human likeness and yet have more power over nature. And because of the more power over nature, they gradually build up a vision of omnipresent or omnipotent personal community. They build up the omnipotent personal community beyond an indifferent nature. They try to build up a sort of community which will follow them, which will look after them, which will follow their behavior, which will follow their understanding. They're having all the different sorts of powerful possessions, and with the different sorts of powerful possessions, they try to build up an omnipotent personal community which is beyond indifferent nature. Now, it is this community which is built up by this hero or god in mythology. It is this community which they build up, omnipotent personal community which they build up. Why this community? Because the hero or the god, they possesses the conceived human likeness, but they have a power over nature, additional power over nature. And this additional power build up their own personal community. And this community gives the hero or makes the hero to enter into the apotheosis. Apotheosis, which I said to you last time, that making a man into God, converting a man into a God of superpowers, giving him a status of God. So this hero of mythology is converted into a god. They are entering them into the apotheosis. And this world of apotheosis, once the world of apotheosis is built up, converted that hero into God or make the God that he is the only one who can save us. We have ample of examples in India. And the world of this apotheosis thus begin to pull away from the rotary cycle of the quest. And what is the rotary cycle? That every triumph is temporary. Whatever you do, whatever you win, it is temporary. It is not permanent one. Whatever you get is not permanent. It is temporary thing that you are going to get. And Fry is mentioning it, that once you know that this is a temporary thing to get, this is a common quest, that every victory is temporary. But once the world of apotheosis is created, then this world of apotheosis will take away this notion that the victory is temporary. They feel that whatever this hero did is permanent. Now nobody can change it. And if you try to change it, then there is going to be a sort of revolt against it. Look out in a contemporary situation, all the examples of what we see and what we watch it in our contemporary life of Babas and Sadhus. You cannot talk against them right now. They have got their own world. And in that world, important personal community, and they make that hero to enter into the world of apotheosis. And this world of apotheosis is simply pulling away from the rotary cycle that every victory is not permanent one. It is temporary. And this, if we look at the quest myth as a pattern of imagery, we see that the hero's quest First of all, in terms of its fulfillment, that hero's quest is fulfilled, then it will move to the rest of the persons. And Fry says that this fulfillment of hero's quest gives us our central pattern of archetypal images. It gives us a central pattern, how to fulfill the things, how to get the things done. And this become an archetype. The vision of innocence, which sees the whole world in terms of total human intelligibility, because this image is perceived in this way by the innocent vision, that this is the only human intelligent thing that can be possible. And that's why it becomes an image, permanent image. Now it corresponds to the unfallen world, or you can say heaven in religion. He says that this vision of innocent, where he says that there is nothing beyond this human intelligence, there is nothing beyond this final lock. And he says that's how you can find out the examples of heaven in religion, or the vision of unfallen world. The world is not going to get destroyed. This is how he is saying that an archetypal image is being created. This image is there. You cannot change it, you cannot mold it, you cannot break it. So I said we may call this the comic vision of life. It is somehow we can say comic vision of life, in contrast to tragic vision. Because tragic vision sees the quest only in the form of ordained cycle, that the sort of cycle which is followed in our day-to-day life. It is going to find out the same sort of cycle. So image is being created, archetypal image is being created, and that archetypal image becomes part of all understandings across the society. And that's why Fry used to say that these archetypal images need to be studied very carefully, minutely. This form, he said, everything is having a two vision, tragic vision and comic vision. You have to understand, you have to find out what exactly is the tragic vision, what exactly is the comic vision of the things. And that's why Fry, in the end of, when he is reaching to the conclusion of this essay, when he is moving towards the conclusion of the essay, Fry gave another table of content. The first table of content we have seen about his cycle, how the dawn, the zenith, the sunset and the night, the solar day, seasonal cycle, human value, then talking about the myth, the image, and the genre. We have seen all these things he's talking about there. And we are going to look after that image. The second sort of table he is trying to bring it up. The second image he is talking about. And he's giving the second table of content. What is the second table of content? This second table of content that Fry is trying to put it in front of its reader in the essay, the concluding part of it. He said that he is trying to attempt a central pattern of comic and tragic visions. What are the central pattern of comic tragic visions? Because understanding of this comic and tragic vision, it is essential. It is one of the essential principles of archetypal criticism, where archetypal criticism, the principle is that the individual and the universal forms of an image are identical. This is the principle of archetypal criticism. It is one essential principle of archetypal criticism that individual and universal forms of image are identical. You cannot change. Universal image and individual image, you can say both the things are different. No. In archetypal criticism, both the images, universal and individual images, which is form, they are identical. The reason is complicated just now. We cannot say that why it is identical. Fry himself has not answered the question, saying that the reasons for this are too complicated just now. We cannot enter into the understanding of all those things. But he said we can proceed according to the general plan of the great chain of being. He said it to the great chain of being, what he is saying, what the visions he is giving. He's saying there's a great chain of beings, and this great chain of being will help us to have a general plan of comic and tragic visions, where the individual and universal forms of an image, which are identical, can able to understand there through comic and tragic visions. So Fry, the first he's talking about, he's talking about five worlds in the second table. In the first table, he talked about the sort of solar cycle of day, seasonal cycle of year, organic cycle of human life, single pattern of significance, myths constructed on the narrative or archetype concept made out of it. This is the first table of content that archetypal criticism talks about. The second type of table content he is talking about. This second table of content, where you will find out the principle, the one essential principle of archetypal criticism, that universal and individual forms of an image are identical. And to understand this, he made a general plan and tried to get a chain that he said it's a great chain of being, BEING, in which he talks about the five worlds. First world is human world. Second world is animal world. Third world is vegetable world. Fourth world is mineral world. And fifth world is unformed world. These are the five worlds through which he is trying to understand the essential principle of archetypal criticism. Now, in human world, the first world, in the comic vision, the human world is a community. Comic vision, human world. Human world in comic vision is a community. You can make a tabulated chart for the sake of your understanding. The first column is of the five world: human world, animal world, vegetable world, mineral world, unformed world. The first column. Now in the second column, Tragic vision, comic vision, tragic vision. In comic vision, what is in human world? In comic vision, in the human world is a community, or a hero who represents the wish fulfillment of the reader. Either it is a community or a hero who represent the wish fulfillment. He is fulfilling the wish of the readers, whatever wish they have. Fulfillment of wish. What is the archetype? The archetype of images of symposium, communion, order, friendship, and love. These are the archetype of images. What sort of images? In comic vision, you will find out. Archetype of images are of symposium, where you will find out the whole community. Because in comic vision, human world is a community. Or in communion, that all the people are coming together, it's one sort of community. It is the order because it's fulfilling the wish of the readers or the people. Here's a friendship between the all people together. There's a love between all the people. So these images, archetypal images. It is in the comic vision. In the comic vision, the human world. Now, what about tragic vision in human world? In tragic vision, the human world is tyranny or anarchy. What is human world? Human world is, according to tragic vision, in tragic vision, how is human world is presented? It is tyranny. It is anarchy almost. But nothing is going to happen. So in tragic vision, in comic vision, it is community. In tragic vision, human world is anarchy, tyranny, or an individual or isolated man, or deserted or betrayed hero. Here, a single person. There is a community. The hero is fulfilling the wish of the readers. Now, here, hero is not fulfilling the wish because he is betrayed one. He is individual. He is isolated. No one is coming with him. Nobody is going to help him. He's isolated. And what sort of things you will find out in tragic vision? That when he is an isolated man, the leader with his back to his follower, the leader who is not taking his followers' support, he is showing back to all the followers that he is not going to fulfill. Because in comic vision, you will find out he is fulfilling the wish. In tragic vision, he is showing the back to his follower. He is bullying giant of romance. He is not able to fulfill. He is deserted. He is leaving the world. He is going away from the world. This is what the tragic vision of human world. Marriage or some equivalent consummation, bringing people together, belongs to comic vision. Wherever you are talking, making people to come close together, wherever you are making people to come close to each other, forming a community, making a friendship, bringing together people. That is comic vision of human world. In a simple words, you can understand. In simple words, you can say this. The harlot or witch and other varieties of what psychologist Jung says about terrible mother. A terrible portrayal of woman. Terrible mother. Jung's idea of terrible mother. Harlot, witch, the negative shades of women. Because when you're talking about the positive shades of women, marriage and consummation, because their woman is portrayed as a lovable figure. But in tragic vision, woman is portrayed as harlot, which she is at fault always. Look out all the tragedies what you read. Woman is not shown in the way that she is supposed to. That's why Fry says that in tragic vision, you will find out this type of presentation of woman. All divine, heroic, angelic, or other superhuman communities. All these communities follow human pattern. What is human pattern? Human way of behavior, human way of living life, human way of likenesses and dislikes. In human world, you will find out all the divine, heroic, angelic, or other superhuman communities, they follow the human pattern. They are not above human pattern. They follow the human pattern. And that's why they make the readers, they make the audience to be the part of them. This is how the first world, human world is. Comic and tragic vision. Now the second world, animal world. In comic vision of the animal world is a community of domesticated animals. Community of domesticated animals. Usually a flock of sheep or a lamb, or one of the gentler birds, usually a dove, not other birds, usually a dove. This is the comic vision of animal world. And what is the archetypal image of comic world? Is a pastoral image. You will find out in pastoral images, you will find out always there's a flock of sheep or lambs. There are doves. The archetype is pastoral image. But what about the tragic vision? The tragic vision of animal world is seen in terms of beasts, birds of prey, wolves, vultures, serpents, dragons. These types of animals you will find out. They present the tragic vision of animal world. Now, if you a little bit of remembering the things, you will find out that whatever texts you read, whatever texts you studied, you will find out whenever there is a tragic vision, you will find out such type of animals, such type of images are appearing there. And these images will make you to understand immediately that what exactly is the context, what exactly is the environment, what exactly is the atmosphere of that particular story, what the environment of that particular plot. And that's why those archetypal images are most important. That's why Fry is insisting so much that once you understand the archetypal image of that particular story or plot, you can able to understand its archetypal. There are archetypal images. Those images are constant. Those images have not changed any time. If you try to read And you will find out these are the images which are very much there in all sorts of vision, whether it is comic vision or whether it is a tragic vision. Look out the human world, what he said. You'll find out the same sort of characterization, same sort of things. Apart from its genres, apart from its narrative strategy, the archetypal images remain the same. The archetypal images are not changed. Now look at the third world which he's talking about. The third world is vegetable world. And the comic vision in the vegetable world is garden, a grove or a park or a tree of life or of tree, a garden of roses, a garden of lotus. This is the comic vision of vegetable world. And the archetypal image of comic vision is the Arcadian image. Beautiful lake, rose garden, a beautiful park, beautiful garden. This is the sort of garden you will find out in Shakespeare's comedies, forest comedies especially. Midsummer's Night Dream you read last year. Look out the garden, look out the forest. Beautiful forest. Green world. This is the comic vision of vegetable world. Now in tragic vision, it is a sinister forest. Forest that appears in a text called Comus or Inferno, where the heath or wilderness or there's a tree of death, the people are dying, there is a sort of dullness, feeling of death. Such type of vegetable world is presented in tragic vision. The fourth is a mineral world. And in comic vision, the mineral world is a city or one building or temple or one stone. Normally, the stone is precious stone. In fact, you will find out the whole comic series. Look out the city, how beautiful city the city is presented. And look out the trees, beautiful trees in the comic world. They can be conceived as luminous, they are going to be bright one, they are going to like a fairy. The city is very beautiful, which makes you to get attracted towards it. Look out the images of city, you will find out in most of the comic visions. And what is the archetype image? Archetype is image is of geometrical image. The archetype of geometrical image. The images of the city, how it is beautifully planned, how it is beautifully made. The buildings, the stones, the temples, everything is beautiful. the starlit domes. There is a comic vision of mineral world. And in tragic vision of mineral world is seen in terms of deserts, rocks, ruins, abandoned buildings, sinister geometrical images like the cross. This is a tragic vision of mineral world. And you will find this tragic vision of mineral world explaining you the content, the condition of the whole thing. Now look at how everything is based on each other. Now the fifth image, fifth world. The fifth world is unformed world. And the comic vision, the unformed world, is a river. Traditionally a fourfold which influenced the Renaissance image, that there are four humors, and that's why we have got the four humors of human body. In that same format, the four things are coming into the unformed world. And this river is very beautiful, giving an idea of the beauty of that particular thing. The four humans making human being a complete human being. These are the images that you will find out in the unformed world. What is the tragic vision? The tragic vision of this world usually becomes the sea, vast one. As the narrative myth of dissolution, everything has been merged into it. Flood of myth, flood myth, that everything has been washed away due to the flood. The combination of sea and beast images, water monsters. These are the images that you will find out in the tragic vision of unformed world. Now, if you look at all these five worlds that Fry has beautifully explained us as a part of great chain of being, to understand the comic and tragic vision, a central pattern of comic and tragic vision, which is creating a sort of archetype image, which makes us to understand that the individual and universal form of image are identical, and this is one of the principles of archetypal criticism. If you look at all these five worlds, everything is based on each other. If you look at the tragic visions or comic visions very carefully, that Fry has nominated, these tragic vision and these comic visions, once you put it all together, you will find out every story, every genre that you are reading, this genre is giving these types of images are appearing in one way or another in front of us. These images are part of it. You cannot say these images are not there. These images are part of these archetypal images. That's why he said these are the archetypal images. These are constant. And obviously, when you see the table very carefully, a great variety of, you can say, poetic images and forms will be found to fit into it. All sorts of poetic images you will find out. That is going to be the part of it. That is becoming, if you see the table very carefully, you will find out all the poetic images are appearing there. Fry gives an example of W.B. Yeats' very famous poet sailing to Byzantium. And when you see sailing to Byzantium, and then the another poem, his second coming of W.B. Yeats, sailing to Byzantium, you can take a very famous example of it. The comic vision of sailing to Byzantium at random, you will find out it has city, it has tree, it has birds, it has community of sages, it is geometrical gyre, it is detached from the whole cyclical world. Byzantium is such a beautiful place that Yeats has created into his poem. It is trying to give you a complete picture of Byzantium. Images he has created. Look at all these images can appear in the poem. Once you read the poem Sailing to Byzantium by W.B. Yeats, you will find out all these sorts of images appearing into it. Fry says, of course, it is only the general comic or tragic context that determines the interpretation of any symbol, how you interpret that symbol. This tragic or comic context determines the symbol that is being used into the text. What sort of symbols used by the writer? And if you are not able to understand what exactly the archetype it belongs to, then how are you going to write criticism on it? And that's why at the beginning of the essay he said criticism is a science. You have to understand either deductive method or inductive method. And if you remember how Fry has tried to make it systematically convincing us that how deductive method will work, how inductive method will work, how you are going to find out the archetypal images with a deductive method, how you are going to find out the archetypal images with an inductive method. And all these symbols that are appearing, you can interpret those symbols with the help of the tragic and comic context into it. This is obvious with neutral archetypes. You can able to understand the whole text. You can able to get the whole text out of it. Fry, reaching to the conclusion of the essay, says that these tables are, of course, obviously, they are not elementarily, but they are grossly oversimplified. These tables are oversimplified because of our inductive approach. We are inducting all the things into it. That archetypes was a mere hunch. And he even claims that the important point is not the deficiencies of the procedures, either procedures, inductive procedure or deductive procedure. He is not saying that we are going to find out the deficiencies, but we have to understand what are the things that they have taken by itself. What are the things they have taken? What are the things they have carried? Some way and somehow, how these things they have inducted, how they have deducted from it. Because the two methods are clearly going to meet in the middle. And once they meet, inductive and deductive approaches, once they meet at the middle of it, the ground plan, the systematic and comprehensive development of criticism has been established during it. It is possible to establish a comprehensive development of criticism because criticism is a sort of science. And once you want to establish it as a form of science, you need to understand these different methods into it. And these different methods, once understood by the critique, so many things you will find out, my friends, that Fry has talked about how to add certain things. Inductive movement, deductive movement, or you will find out the sort of how hypothesis has been postulated, how myths are important, how genres have been created out of these archetypes. How are we going to plan criticism as a form of science? Why criticism is important? What makes criticism to be the part of understanding of literature? We find it that Fry is trying to search the answers of all these questions. Fry is getting answers of all these questions through his essay, The Archetypes of Literature. These archetypes helps us to establish a criticism and criticism as one of the important sciences to understand literature. I hope that we can able to understand the whole thing once we read it again, then it is possible for us to understand the whole essay once again. It is a big essay, it requires a continuous reading. Then and then it is possible for us to understand it very comfortably because everything is interconnected with each other. As I have said to you that this essay is divided into three different parts. First, he is trying to point out what is criticism, how criticism is a science. This is the first part he talked about, how this criticism need to be developed as a sort of science, how philosophy, how history helps it to get it as a form of science. Then the second part he talked about the inductive way of uh, making archetypes, understanding archetypes, and there he talks about how historian treats literature, how philosophy treats literature, how history and philosophy treats literature. He talks about how criticism, how it requires to be systematic. If it is not systematic, then we are not able to understand the quality of literature. Then he talks about the pre-literary categories of ritual, myth, and folktale, and then he realized the relationship between these categories and literature. And the last part he talked about the deductive method. He says that there is a deductive method, and in deductive method he talks about patterns of imagery, he talks about myth, he talks about the different tables. He has given a table of solar cycle, solar day, seasonal cycle, and all those. And the second title he gives about a tragic and comic vision to formulate, establish an archetype, and to develop a criticism. This is how the archetypes of literature talks about overall. I think we have tried to make it very simplified to make you to understand. Let us hope that we can able to understand this very comfortably.